Om Namo Narayanaye. Om Namo Narayanaye.
Asmad Guru Bhyo Namaha, Asmad Paramaguru Bhyo Namaha, Asmad Sarvaguru Bhyo Namaha. So we're continuing on with our discussion of the book Sri Vaishnava Brahmins, and we've come to the third section. So let's get straight to the text. So this is the third section of Sri Vaishnava Brahmins, Vaishnavism in South India. A devout Sri Vaishnava thinks that he should strive his best, or he should try his best, let's say, to obtain moksha or salvation, and that this is possible only through an acharya or religious teacher. Without the intervention of an acharya, however learned one may be, he cannot hope to attain moksha or liberation or salvation. In support of this view, many a Vaishnava often quotes the examples of the wicked Kshatrabandhu and the good and pious Pundarikaksha. Okay, so there's a story about these two, who both obtained salvation only through an acharya. Acharya means teacher, guru, otherwise. In the case of, and this is of course in Lord Krishna also, gives this advice in Bhagavad Gita that one should approach somebody who knows something to teach you. If you want to learn something, especially spiritual knowledge, you have to approach somebody who knows, and he can teach you, right? Tadvidi paripatrena pariprashnena sevaya uparekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Tattvadarshi, a person who knows the truth, right, is jnaninas, he knows, right? And you should approach that person, and you should serve that person, and you should also, but the more important thing than serving him is you should ask questions. Pariprashnena, there should be questions, right? Because it's not just a matter of hearing from a teacher, but you have to clear the doubts when you hear something. You have to clear the doubts by discussing with the teacher, and then you go away and meditate upon it, and then it becomes firmly fixed in your mind, the conclusion that you come to. So in the case of both these men, so we're talking about Kshatrabandhu and Pundarikaksha, Narada, the great rishi or sage, appeared to be their acharya. According to Rahasya Amnayam, Rahasya means secret, Amnayam means the purest secret. Every person desirous of obtaining moksha or liberation is expected to seek an acharya and to show always respect towards him and to his acharyas, and so on up to God. This is called the Guru Parampara, or the Sampradaya, the tradition, or the lineage, or the succession or apostolic succession of teachers. Okay, so you should find it. So that's the first thing. The first thing is he's saying that in Sri Vaishnavism, as with other forms of Vaishnavism and even other forms of Hinduism, you're supposed to find a teacher, search for and accept the teacher. And the teacher the first qualification of the teacher is that he should come in a lineage of teachers. So he should have a teacher, and so on up to God. So God is considered to be the greatest acharya for the whole world, and he is the master of everything in this universe. Sometimes we hear this term in Sanskrit, Jagat Guru. Jagat Guru means the teacher of the world, like that. In fact, there's another saying, Krishnam Vande Jagat Guru. Krishna is the teacher of the world because he taught the Bhagavad Gita, of course. So the ultimate teacher, of course, is the Supreme Lord, because the Supreme Lord knows everything. So God is considered to be the greatest teacher, right? All Sri Vaishnavas firmly believe that God, being all merciful, he would not allow the souls to get away from him, and that he would do everything that is just to save them from going astray from him. This view is inculcated by every Sri Vaishnavite acharya from Ramanuja downwards. We can say this is there from the acharyas before Ramanuja too. But anyway, he's saying it's from Ramanuja down to today. Ramanuja, in his introduction to the Gita Bhasya, which is his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, says God is in his infinite mercy, assumed various forms without putting away his own essential godlike nature, and time after time incarnated himself, right? So Krishna says this in the Bhagavad Gita, Pritranaya sadhunam vinashayati duskritam dharma samstapanataya sambhavami yuge yuge. Krishna he explains his incarnations, he explains his avatars, and he gives this verse in Bhagavad Gita basically gives the definition of an incarnation, which is show mercy or save the devotees or the fallen persons who are refugees at the feet of God, the surrendered souls, right? Pritranaya sadhunam, the sadhus, the good people. Vinashaya to duskritam, vanquish the miscreants or the wicked people, it's evil people. And dharma samstapanata, establish religiosity, establish the knowledge of religion, of religion, and of the dharma, the eternal way, the sanatana dharma. Okay, so God is infinite, and His infinite mercy. He in various comes in various forms, putting away his own essential godlike nature, and time to time incarnates himself, descending not only for the purpose of relieving the burden of the earth, but also to be accessible to men, even such as we are, so revealing himself to the world as to be visible to the sight of all, and doing such other marvelous deeds as to ravish the hearts and eyes of all beings, high and low. Vedanta Deshika, who is one of the acharyas, the author of this book is a Vadagalaya or a follower of the northern or Kanchipuram school of Sri Vaishnavism. And so their greatest acharya after Ramanuja is the Vedanta Deshika, who is a very great scholar and who's accepted as a great scholar and worshipped by all Sri Vaishnavas, regardless of their sect. Vedanta Deshika, and another preceptor or teacher of the Sri Vaishnavas, expresses himself in a similar way, a similar strain, in the introductory chapter of his Rahasya Traya Saram. Rahasya again means the esoteric secrets. Traya means three, and it refers to the three mantras which are taught, basic mantras which are taught in Mantra Upadesh, which is a part of the Samashrayanam or Pancha Samskara ceremony, which is the initiation of Sri Vaishnavas, which is a Pancharatra practice. And Saram means the quintessence or the essence or the cream of the esoteric knowledge of the three mantras, like that. So there is a class of works amongst Sri Vaishnavas called Rahasya Granthas. Grantha means books, which is all about the inner meanings or the esoteric meanings of these three mantras, especially these three mantras and some other mantras also. And the one which is the classic magnum opus, the greatest work of Vedanta Deshika on this subject, is called Rahasya Traya Saram. It's available in English. If anybody wants to have it in English, they can get in touch with me. I can give you a link. You can download it for free. Or any other language like Sanskrit, or I'm sure it's there in some other languages also, translated into Tamil and things. So a work written in Mani Pravalam. So this actual work, Rahasya Traya Saram, is written in Mani Pravalam, which is a mixture of Tamil and Sanskrit. The word Mani Pravalam, Mani means a pearl, right? In Sanskrit, Mani means a jewel, but in Tamil it means a pearl, and in Pravalam means coral. So coral is red in color, pearl is white in color. If you make a necklace of coral and pearl, sometimes ladies wear this pearl and coral necklace. It's very beautiful, more beautiful than just having a string of pearls by itself or just having a string of coral by itself. So the idea is to mixing Sanskrit and Tamil, both of them sacred languages for Sri Vaishnavas. Because why? Because the Vedas are written in Sanskrit, and because the Nalaya Divya Prabandham, the 4,000 songs of the Alvars, are written in Tamil. So the acharyas in the medieval period of Sri Vaishnavas have a special liturgical language which they use, which is called Mani Pravalam, like that. So we have, if anybody's interested, we have classes on some of these works in Mani Pravalam, which are conducted by my Sanskrit teacher and Sri Rangam, Dr. Sriman R. Tir Narayana Rangaswamy, and you can find his lectures also there on this same YouTube channel. Okay, so he knows Tamil, he knows Sanskrit, and he knows also how to read the Manipravalam, which is the mixture. It's like Sanskritized Tamil. So, and highly prized by Vadagalai Sri Vaishnavas. Okay, so Rahasya Triyasaram is especially followed by the Vadagalais. The word, when we say Vadakalai and Tenkalai, or Vadagalai and Tenkalai, K and G are the same in Tamil. So we can say Galai or Kalai. The Kalai or Kala means culture or art. Let's take it as culture, right? Vada in Tamil means north. Tenga means south. So Manipravalam is a mixture of Sanskrit and Tamil. And it's highly prized. This Rahasya Triyasaram is a work on the esoteric meaning of the three mantras, which is highly prized by the Vadagalais, or the northern school. The Vada means north and Tenga means south. So the Vadagalais, the Vadagalai school, it's not from North India, it's from northern Tamil Nadu, meaning Kanchipuram is in northern Tamil Nadu. And Sri Rangam is in southern Tamil Nadu, or it's actually in middle Tamil Nadu. But anyway, it's south of Kanchi. So when we say Vadagalai, we refer to the followers of the Kanchipuram Acharyas. Vedanta Deshika was from Kanchipuram. Although he moved to Sri Rangam later in his life, he started out in Kanchipuram. And then the Tengalai space is the Vatican of Sri Vaishnavam, which is the biggest temple, Sri Rangam. So it tends to be more Tengalais in Sri Rangam and more Vadagalais in Kanchipuram. Okay. So the Vadagalais especially like the explanations of Vedanta Deshika on these mantras, and the Tengalais specifically, they like the explanations of their acharyas like Tilalokacharya and Manavalavan Munigal. There's very little difference in the explanations. If you go through both of these sets of books, which we are, you'll find that there's very little difference. But there'll be a section in this book later on which describes some of the differences. And if people are interested in more of the differences, we can point you to some other books and some other things about the differences. Many of them are very minor and not worth discussion, but there are a few important differences between the two schools. Everybody follows Ramanuja, everybody's following Vishishta Dvaita Vedanta, right? The holistic or specific, specified type of non-dualism of Ramanuja. So in the Rahasya Trayasara, again, which is by Vedanta Deshika and which is written in Manipravala and highly prized by the Vadagalais, he says, Vedanta Deshika says, that the Lord gave the Vedas in former days to Brahma. That means Chaturmukha Brahma, right? When we use the word Brahma, sometimes we mean Chaturmukha Brahma, means the four-headed Brahma, who is considered to be the creator of this universe, right? But he didn't creator of this universe in the sense of being an engineer who took what was created by the Supreme Lord Sriman Narayana and fashioned it into what we see today. Whereas sometimes we say Brahma, meaning the supreme spirit, the Brahman, means Sriman Narayana sometimes. So here he's saying that the Lord gave the Shastras, right, brought into existence the scriptures and caused them to be taught to men through Brahma, right? I'm sorry. He gave the Vedas, which are these scriptures in former days to Brahma. And then when these sacred texts were stolen from Brahma, God secured them back to Brahma. Okay, so there were a couple of, it's said, there's a story that there are Madhu and Kaitapa demons. There were these demons that stole away the Vedas from Brahma. And the Lord incarnated as Lord Hayagriva, killed those demons and returned the Vedas to Brahma. Okay, so he brought into existence scriptures and caused them to be taught to men through Brahma. Through Sanat Kumaras, right, who were the sons of Brahma. Brahma had several sons, Brahma being the first living being. Obviously, he had offspring. So the Sanat Kumaras, or sometimes called the Sanakadi Kumaras, right? There are four young boy sages. They appear to be ever youthful boys, right? And they're very learned. They're sons of Brahma. They're called Sanat, Sanandan, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumara, right? There are these four sages. They're called the Shanadi, right? Four sages, sons of Brahma. He sought to promulgate good ideas. So through these four Kumaras, right? Kumara means a young boy. through these 4 young boy saints, Brahma thought that he would propagate good ideas. So the Supreme Lord, God, tried to keep up the correct way, or sampradaya, right? Sampradaya actually directly means tradition. So he's translating that as the correct way. Through the Maharishi, the great sage, Narada, or there's other Maharishis. Narada is one of them. Parashara is another one. Parashara is the father of Vedavyasa. Shuka, right, who was the son of Vedavyasa, and Shonaka. And anybody who's read some of the Puranas, you'll know some of these personalities. Narada, Parashara, Shuka, and Shonaka rishis. They're different. These rishis did their best to propagate the scriptures amongst other beings, right, especially human beings. Then Vyasa was created, and he was induced to write the great epic. So there's in Sanskrit literature, there are 2 great epics. This one is called the Mahabharata. So Maha means great. Bharata means is the name of India, or the name of Greater India, or in that case, it's thought of as even the world, the whole world, right? So it's the story of Greater India, and it includes the Bhagavad Gita, it includes the 1,000 names of Vishnu, it includes some very important sections on dharma, on religiosity, for the enlightenment of people of the world. Next, there's another itihasa which was also created called the Ramayana, which is about the Lord when he comes in the incarnation or avatar as Lord Rama. But here we're talking about Vyasa creating. That was written by another sage called Valmiki. This one is written by Vyasa. Well, Vyasa compiled the Vedas and compiled the Purana and authored the Puranas and authored the Mahabharata like that. So the Vedas are not authored; they're eternal, but they had to be compiled into a set of 4 Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Tava like that. So next, God himself, or Sriman Narayana, became incarnate in this world as Hamsa. Hamsa. So there's an avatar called Hamsa, and then there's another avatar called Matsya, in the form of a fish, Hayagriva with a horse's head, Narayana, which is 2 rishis, 2 great sages who appeared at Badrikashram. Narayana Rishi was the Lord himself, and he taught Nara, his disciple, the Astakshara mantra, the 8-syllable Om Namo Narayana mantra. Gita Charya. Here, Gita Charya refers to Lord Krishna, who spoke the Bhagavad Gita on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and as avatars Rama and Krishna, right? And in these forms taught tattvas, or truths, and several good things. Okay. He caused the proper views expressed by himself to be promulgated by such wise men such as Bhishma. So if we look in the Mahabharata, we find Bhishma is explaining the 1,000 names of Vishnu, which is a very holy part of the Mahabharata. And so Lord Krishna is there personally himself, but he doesn't give the 1,000 names himself, but he allows for his great devotee, who is a Mahajana, who is a very, very great devotee of Lord Bhishma Dev, to speak the 1,000 names of Vishnu. So he's a wise man. He gave out to this world many truths by the Pancharatra Shastras. Okay, Shastra of course means scripture. The Pancharatras are a certain set of scriptures. There are listed in the Padma Tantra, which is one of Padma Samhita or Padma Tantra Prayoga. There is listed 108 Pancharatras, but there are actually more than 108 Pancharatras, just like we have more than 8 Upanishads, 108 Upanishads. The Pancharatra is a text which describes the worship of Vishnu. It's divided up into 4. Every Pancharatra is divided up into 4 categories of classes of discussion. It talks about Tatwa, it talks about the reality that we see around us. It talks about the mystic yoga system. And then the last 2 parts talk about installing deities and building temples and performing festivals and daily worship of the deities or the icons in those temples. Okay, so it has to do with the worship of Vishnu, mostly in the temple form. Yeah, I noticed that too, that Krishna, that here he's written Gita Charya, then he's also mentioned about Lord Krishna as an avatar of Rama and Krishna, like that. I don't know why he's done like that. Okay, so the question is, does Hamsa Avatar belong to the Sri Sampradaya? No. Hamsa Avatar, like every other avatar, doesn't belong to a Sampradaya. So the avatars of God don't belong to a specific sect. When God comes, he doesn't belong to a specific sect, right? But there are certain sects which emphasize different avatars. For instance, we have the Ramanamis or the Ramanandis, right? They're a sect that they like to worship Lord Rama more than they like to worship Lord Krishna. You have Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Nimbarka Vaishnavas, Vallabha Vaishnavas. They like to worship Lord Krishna more than they like to worship Lord Rama or any other avatar, right? You have Sri Vaishnavas who, have people that worship all sorts of different avatars of the Lord, like that. The same thing with the followers of Madhvacharya, like that. So it just depends upon the sect. It depends upon the sampradaya, the tradition. And it also depends upon the individual. An individual Vaishnava, a worshipper of Lord Vishnu. If you say someone's a Vaishnava, it doesn't necessarily mean he's only worshiping Vishnu. Maybe he's worshiping another form of Vishnu, like Rama or Krishna or some other avatar of the Lord. Okay. So Hamsa Avatar is found, is understood from the scriptures. And we can't say that the scriptures are sectarian. The Vedas are certainly not sectarian, and the great Puranas, the Mahapurana, most of the Puranas, unless there's interpolation in the scriptures from a particular sect, the common scriptures of like the Puranas and Itihasas like Ramayana and Mahabharata and the Vedas, they're not sectarian. Okay. So no. Okay, so the question is the Hamsa Avatar in the Guru Parampara of the Sri Vaishnavas? The answer is no. The Guru Parampara of the Sri Vaishnavas will be explained further on, and usually we don't have. We find that in the Madhva's Parampara, they start off with Hamsa Bhagavan. And there might be some other people, some other sampradayas who claim Hamsa to be the originator of their sampradaya, of their tradition, but not Sri Vaishnavas. Okay. So finally, so the Pancharatra Scriptures, we were just talking about the Pancharatra Scriptures. They are scriptures that talk about the worship of the Lord, especially in Srimad Narayana in its different forms in temples. Finally, he himself, the Supreme Lord, incarnated as 10 avatars or 10 different descents, and according to different sampradayas, they're also a little different. The Madhvas, the Sri Vaishnavas, and many people in North India, including I think probably Vallabhas and Gaudiyas and maybe even Nimbarkas, and they have a slightly different understanding of what the 10 avatars are. So he incarnated as 10 avatars in the form of Haran, Kusha, and Patakala. Okay, so here he's not talking about 10 avatars. Of the 10, normally we hear of Dasha avatars or the 10 avatars, meaning Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Narasimha, like that. Here he's talking about 10 avatars. The Sri Vaishnavas consider that the Alvars are Amsa avatars. They are partial incarnations of either the Lord himself, or there's one idea that they are incarnations that there are 10 or 12 Alvars according to different calculations, right? Some people calculate that there are 12 Alvars. These Alvars were great saints who wrote the 4,000 songs in Tamil, called the Nalaya Divya Prabandham, the Divine Holy 4,000. Some people count them as 12, some people count them as 10. The people who count them as 10, some of them say they're incarnations of the Lord, just like the Das avatars, and they exclude from those 10 Madhura Kavi Alvar, who was a disciple of Nam Alvar, the leader of the Alvars, and they exclude Andal, who was an incarnation of Bhudevi, the goddess of the earth, who is the consort of the Lord. So that's how they get 10. But most people will say there are 12 Alwars, and they include Madhurakavi Alwar, the disciple of Nam Alwar, and Goda Devi or Andal, who is considered to be the Amsavatar incarnation of Bhudevi. Right. So here he's talking about that, about the idea that the Lord came down in 10 forms as Alwars. So just as clouds drink water from the sea and pour down this water as rain, so essential for the upkeep of all living beings, these Alwars, right? So here he's talking about Parankusha and Patakala, right? So Parankusha is another name for Sadakorpa or Namalwa, right? And Patakala is a name for Tirumangai Alwar. So the head of the Alwars and the last chronological Alwar, right? Etc. He says, etc. There are actually 12. We'll learn their names as we go along. Okay. So he says. So he's giving an analogy. Just as the clouds drink the water from the sea, or the sun shines on the sea, and the clouds make up that water vapor, and then they pour rain down on the earth, which is important for all living beings. Similarly, the Alwars gave in their own mother tongue, Tamil, the essence of Vedic teachings. So according to Sri Vaishnavas, you can understand the same message of the Vedas, of the Vedanta, the Upanishads, as if you read the Tamil the Tamil prayers of the Alwars. In the land of Augustia, okay, so sometimes South India is called the land of Augustia because there was a great rishi called Augustia, and it's said to have had his hermitage down there in southern Karnataka. In Karnataka, maybe it's northern Karnataka, there's a place called, there's a place which is named after Vatapi, who was a demon that Augustia killed. And Augustia is said to be down there, and they talk about Augustia. He's a great sage of rishi. So in the land of Augustia, which would be southern Karnataka and maybe coming over southern Tamil Nadu and Kerala, like that part of India, the Lord became incarnate in the form of several saints, as prophesized in the stanza found in the Bhagavata Purana and quoted below. Okay, so in the Bhagavatam, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is said to have originated in South India anyway, right? There is a statement in the later cantos, I think it's in the 11th canto or 12th canto, that says that in Kali Yuga, especially, great saints will be born in southern India, and many people believe that is a prophecy about the Alwars. So it says here, Kalo Bhavishyanti Narayana Parayana Kwachin Mahabhaga Dramide Shucha Bhurishaha Tamrapani Nadi Yatra Kritamala Payashvini Kaveri Cha Mahabhaga Patichi Cha Mahanadi. Right. So what it's saying here basically. So let's see what they say as a translation. This, when rendered freely into English, runs as such. It is in the Kali Yuga that some devoted exclusively to Narayana are to arise here and there in some places, but they are to be born in large numbers in the region of Dravida. Dravida Desha means the southern Indian countries, right? There are 5 provinces which are considered the Panchadravida provinces. There's Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka, Andhra, and maybe Maharashtra. I'm not sure, but anyway. So those are the 5 southern parts of India. And in the Dravida country, that's called Dravida Desh, and the Dravidians, they're people, South Indians are called Dravidians. By the side of the rivers Tamraparni, Vaigai, Palar, right? So we have Tamraparni River, which is really down south in India, Vaigai, which is near Madurai, the Palar, and in the region of the famous Kaveri, which runs through Sri Rangam, and the Mahanadi, or the Periyar River, which is it's called today, which flows to the west. So these are all, Mahanadi, of course, means the great river. So these are all considered sacred rivers in South India. on noting the birthplaces of the 10 Alwars, it looks as if the prophecy alluded to the stanza already quoted is fulfilled. The great saint Sadakopa, or Nam Alwar, right? Otherwise called Kusha, right? Let's just finish this sentence and I'll answer the question. Was born in the land of Tamraparni, and in the same region, Madhurakavi was also born, and Periyalwar and his daughter, Andal, in the region of the Vaigai. Holgai, Pei, and Budid, the first Alwars, belong to the Pala region, as well as the great Tirumalashai Alwar. No, this is directly in the Bhagavatam. He's quoting a verse directly from the Bhagavatam. The question is this stanza in the Bhagavat Mahatmyam? There's a thing called Bhagavat Mahatmyam. There are several Bhagavat Mahatmyams, which is the glories of the Srimad Bhagavatam. There's a katha about Bhakti and her two sons, Jnana and Vairagya. So Bhakti Devi is considered as a lady, and she has two sons, knowledge and detachment. Knowledge and renunciation, correct, like that. This is the Bhagavat Mahatmyam. This is not got anything to do with this. This has got to do with the direct quote from the Bhagavatam, not from the Bhagavat Mahatmyam. Bhagavat Mahatmyam comes in a Purana, in another Purana. Okay, so let's continue on. So, as the stanza quoted above is not found in certain manuscript copies and printed editions of Bhagavat Purana, some critics maintain the stanza to be an interpolation and believe the insertion to have taken place long after the appearance of the Alwars. Okay, so you always have people who criticize, who find fault, and they look and they see and they think it's an interpolation. Interpolation means it's an addition by some scribe, or when things get written out, sometimes we find different editions. Even the Bhagavad Gita, there are different editions of the Bhagavad Gita. There are different editions of Mahabharata, of all these different scriptures, except for the Vedas. The Vedas are, of course, passed down orally and repeated like that. So there's no scribal errors or interpolations normally. So we have here some critics saying that maybe that there are different forms of the Bhagavatam, the Bhagavat Purana. For example, in the Madhva Sampradaya, there's a whole section of the Bhagavatam which is accepted as part of the Bhagavatam in North India, which is not accepted by the Madhva Sampradaya, which deals with particular leelas, the Brahma Vimohana Leela, etc., like that. So this is also a problem if people want to quote from Puranas and not quote from the Vedas. That's why the Vedas are considered to be the most important or the highest scriptures or the highest scriptural proof, is because Puranas, we can find things that have been written into Puranas, things that have been kept out of certain Puranas. So Purana is not the final word on a scriptural quote. But if we have a Vedic injunction, something from the Vedas, that's considered to be perfect. Okay, so some people doubt this, okay? But it doesn't really matter if there's a sloka in the Bhagavatam and it looks like it mentions the Alwars and prophesizes the Alwars, so what? Great, very good, okay? If the Alwars just came about and there's no sloka in the Bhagavatam, doesn't matter. This doesn't mean the Alwars didn't appear, doesn't mean they didn't write 4,000 songs, doesn't mean that their 4,000 songs aren't important spiritually. They are. It's very important. So we should take, the important thing is the songs of the Alwars and the meaning that they have, the philosophical meaning that they have. And the devotional meaning that they have. That's the important thing. So according to some critics, the whole chapter dealing with the Alwars, Acharyas, and Avatars is said to be an interpolation. Okay, according to some people. However this may be, it is clear that this interpretation, interpolation should have taken place. If it was added, right? It should have taken place long before the time of Vedanta Deshika. Vedanta Deshika was in the 14th century, right? 13th and 14th century. So because he based his views expressed in Rahasya Trayasaram on this sloka of the Bhagavad Purana, right? So he had some opinion about this, which he wrote in his books, and he quoted that. So it's very important that we can understand how ancient a book is by what acharyas who lived at certain times have quoted it. For example, if there's a book that was written 100 years ago, obviously Vedanta Deshika and Ramanuja and Shankaracharya, who were 1,000 years ago, are not going to mention it. We wouldn't expect that. If somehow or other we find a book with a quote from somebody, then we know that that book was written after that person wrote his thing or after that person appeared, right? So this is just common sense. Okay, so on the other hand, the learned amongst the community of Brahmins hold that this is not an interpolation. They hold that the Bhagavatam came into existence long before the time of the Alvars, and that the passage relating to the birth of the Alvars is not an interpolation. They hold that many of the Tamil stanzas of the Prabandha echo the sentiments expressed in the Bhagavad Purana, and they say that in some cases they are almost similar to slokas in the Bhagavad Purana, right? So people equate certain statements by the Alvars with slokas in Sanskrit of the Bhagavad Purana. Vishnu or Narayana, as he is generally called, is considered to be the supreme deity of all the Sri Vaishnavas, the supreme Godhead. Narayana is considered to be ever in close association with Lakshmi, who is considered his divine eternal consort. She shares all powers and responsibilities with Narayana and is on a par with him. So the author is a Vadagalai because he believes that, practically speaking, Lakshmi and Narayana are equal, like that. Whereas the Tengalais might have some difference on that point, a little bit. So the idea is held by every learned Vadagalai Sri Vaishnava. And in support of this, they quote and refer to the Chaturshloki, or four verses of Sri Alavandar, otherwise known in Sanskrit as Yamunacharya, the grand guru of Ramanuja. See page 18 for the Chaturshloki, or these four verses. So they're quoting Yamunacharya for this. In these four stanzas, or four verses, Alavandar maintains that Lakshmi shares with Narayana the bed, the vahana. Vahana means the carrier or the palanquin, right? And that the devas and that the devas with their wives are her servants, right? Her splendor is as boundless as that of her Lord, and he too cannot measure it. So she has infinite auspicious qualities like the Supreme Lord, according to his interpretation of Chaturshloki by Yamunacharya. The three worlds are flourishing on account of her grace only. In all his vibhutis, means the Supreme Lord's vibhutis, Sriman Narayana's vibhutis, his opulences, right? She is associated with him and is never found separately. So she is there with him in Sri Vaikuntha. She's there here in this material world. When he comes to this material world, she also accompanies him. And Sri Vaishnavas refer to the spiritual world as Nitya Vibhuti, or the eternal realm of God. This place is called Leela Vibhuti, the realm of the pastimes of God. Right. Not that he doesn't have pastimes there, but here he has different pastimes, let's say. In all his vibhutis, she's associated with him and is never found separately. Why is the Bhagavatam verse 11, 5, 38, 40 directly related to the Alvars? Why not with Ramanuja or other acharyas born in South India? Okay, can be, right? Kali Yuga is a very long time. The verse says that here and there in Kali Yuga, Vaishnavas will be born on earth. And it says specifically they'll be born in greater numbers in the South India, in the areas around these particular rivers, the Kaveri, the Tamrapani, the Mahanadi, the Vaigai, etc. Right? That's all it says. If you interpret that to mean the Alvars only, that's probably wrong. If you interpret that to include the Alvars, yes, sure. Right. It includes the Alvars. Maybe it includes other people also. Other great devotees may also be born. Ramanuja was also born there. Vedanta Deshika was also born there. The Madhvacharya was also born in South India. Okay, so many great Vaishnava acharyas were born in South India, right? And not just acharyas, but Vaishnavas. So it doesn't say acharyas even. So to say it's only the Alvars, no. Nobody says it's only the Alvars. We just understand that the Alvars are included. The Alvars are included in that prophecy. They're included in that prophecy. So it's the sloka doesn't say only the Alvars. It's not interpreted by Sri Vaishnavas to mean only the Alvars. Right? You have to understand what it says. Right? It says that Vaishnavas will appear in South India. Even Prabhupada mentioned this, even Srila Prabhupada of ISKCON, he understood that this, it's there. If you look in some of his works, he'll mention that all the great acharyas, except for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? Even Nimbarka and I'm not sure where Balaba was exactly from, but many of these acharyas are all from South India, actually. So anyway, okay. He mentions it in CC. I'm not exactly sure what he mentions in Chaitanya Charitamrita, but it's mentioned. If you look at the verse in the Bhagavatam, if you look at the verse where it's quoted in other places, different Vaishnava acharyas will mention that there are great devotees of Lord Vishnu who were born in South India. Does that mean the Alvars? The Alvars were great devotees of Lord Vishnu. They were born in South India, so it refers to the Alvars. It also may refer to other people. Possible, for sure, no problem. Boundless as so her attributes, Lakshmi's attributes are as boundless as his and cannot be measured. The three worlds are flourishing on account of her grace only. In all his vibhutis, she is associated with him and is never found separately. This is the view held by all Vadagalai Sri Vaishnavas. Okay, so he's also hinting at the point here. He's going to say something about the Tengalais here. But the Tengalai Sri Vaishnavas do not consider her to be in the same category as Narayana. So when we use the word category here, if we translate that into Sanskrit, what we're talking about is Tatwa. She is not the same Tatwa. She's not the same principle, right? We have the principle of the individual soul. We have the principle in Vedanta philosophy of the principle of the individual soul. We have the principle of matter, of dull matter, and we have the principle of God. These are the three main principles or categories or tattvas in Vedanta, which is spoken of in Vedanta philosophy. Here we're talking about theological concepts here, Lakshmi, Narayana, like that. If we talk about purely philosophical terms, we have God, Ishvara, we have Chit and Achit. Achit means without consciousness, dull matter, and Chit means with consciousness. So, is she God? No, she's not God. Is she conscious? Yes, she is conscious. Therefore, she belongs to the third category, Chit, which means conscious, like that. If you want to say that Chit means Jiva, Chit means Jivatman, that's fine. You can say like that. She is certainly much greater than the normal Jivatman. So greater than you or me. She is a very great personality. We are not consorts of the Supreme Lord like that. She is. But at the same time, the category is different. There cannot be two gods. In Vedanta, there's only one God. That is Sriman Narayana, like that. Or whatever form of Narayana that you worship, Krishna, Rama, Narasimha, whatever it is, like that. There's a female form of God called Mohini Avatar. The Lord Vishnu appears as the Mohini Avatar in a female form. That female form of God is Vishnu. Vishnu is worshipped with tulsi leaves on her feet, like that. Vishnu is worshipped in certain ways, right? Because she's God completely. Lakshmi, however, we don't put tulsi leaves on Lakshmi's feet. We don't worship Lakshmi as God. Lakshmi and all her avatars are worshipped as the consorts of God, the supreme servitors of God, like that. So there's a difference between Vadagalais and Tengalais. The Vadagalais see her as co-equal with God, a second God, in other words. Whereas the Tengalais see her, there can be no second God, according to Tengalai. understanding. So therefore, she's not God. They say she is just like God, therefore she's just like a second God, like that. She's certainly not an incarnation of the Lord. She's not an avatar like Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Narasimha, Rama, Krishna. She's not an avatar like that. She's not Vishnu Tatva, right? The principle of Lakshmi is not Vishnu Tatva. So therefore, the Tengalai say, she's not Vishnu Tatva. She's not dull matter. She must be the third principle, which is Chit, like that. Exactly what she is, right? We have to look into other things. This is a very simplistic understanding that I'm giving here, right? To go into the detail, we have to look into some other books. Okay, another question. So the Vadagalais are closer than in that respect to the Gaudiyas. I don't know what the Gaudiyas believe exactly. Do the Gaudiyas believe that Radharani is Krishna Tattva? Do they believe that she is Vishnu Tattva? As far as I know, Gaudiyas don't believe that she's Vishnu Tattva. However, there are some works of the Gaudiyas where they say that she is equal to Krishna. Some statements say she's not equal to Krishna. Okay, she's different from Krishna. Krishna is the Shaktiman, the possessor of Shakti, and she is the of power, of all power, and she is the embodiment of one of his Shaktis, Ladini Shakti, right? So how can she be exactly the same as Krishna? So I don't think even according to the Gaudiyas, she's exactly the same as God. She's not a second God, like that. Now, there are different concepts. Some people have a concept that that God means not just one person, but means a divine couple, either Radha Krishna, Sita Ram, or Lakshmi Narayan in this case, Sri and Lord Sriman Narayana, like that. That is more or less the concept of the Vadagalai Sri Vaishnavas, that Sri Devi and Sriman Narayana together constitute the God, the Godhead. That they're not really very separate beings exactly, that they're a divine couple. Okay? So that may be there to a certain extent in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. You know, we are here to read about Sri Vaishnavism, like that. If we want to go into the differences between the different sects and the different sampradayas, like that, it will take a much more detailed discussion. We can do that. But first of all, we have to understand the basics of each tenets of each school, then we can compare them, right? So I'm not prepared right now to give an opinion as to whether the concept of Lakshmi is closer to the Vadagalai or Tengalai in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. I'm not prepared to discuss that right now. Like that. We can definitely discuss it, but we must discuss the concept with proper quotes from each one of the different sampradayas and their acharyas. Then we can see what they actually believe. Okay, so just for now, he's contrasting the northern school, the Kanchi school, and the Sri Rangamacharya school on this particular aspect, right, of philosophy and theology, like that. If we try to bring in what other schools believe, that will confuse us. So what we have to do now is we have to concentrate on just to understand there's a slight difference between the Vadagalai conception and the Tengalai conception of the position of Sri, of Lakshmi. Okay? So, but the Tengalai Sri Vaishnavas do not consider her to be in the same category. No, they do not consider them as Narayana. Don't consider them to be her to be Vishnu Tattva. And hold that Sri or Lakshmi is on a lower plane than Narayana. Now, lower plane, to some people that might sound derogatory, that might sound bad. Why do we think that Lakshmi is lower than Sriman Narayana? Sriman Narayana is God. There's only one God. Everyone but Sriman Narayana, everyone but Vishnu Tattva is naturally lower. Everyone is a servitor. Everyone, even in the sampradaya of Madhvacharya, he believes that everybody is dependent upon the Supreme Lord. So Lakshmi is also dependent upon the Supreme Lord, according to Madhva. According to Sri Vaishnavas, Lakshmi is dependent upon the Supreme Lord. Is not, I don't know exactly, we have to look at it in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Is Radha dependent on Krishna? Isn't it said that Krishna is Swatantra? He's completely independent. If Krishna is completely independent, is Radha completely independent? I don't know that I've ever read that Radha is completely independent. Maybe there might be some statement there, something like that. So we don't know until we go deeply and look at the exact definition and understanding that the Gaudiyas have, the Madhvas have, the Vadagalais have, the Tengalais have. So we can't say who is closer and who is further away like that. But anyway, we should just accept the Tengalais. He's trying to explain the difference between Vadagalais and Tengalais concept of Lakshmi. So he's saying that the Tengalais, Southern school, Sri Rangam school, consider Lakshmi to be on a lower plane. If you mean by lower plane, as dependent upon the Lord, as controlled by the Lord, as supported by the Lord, as subservient to the Lord, yes, we do. That's the way Tengalais think about it. Vadagalais don't think that she is dependent on the Lord. They don't think that she's subordinate to the Lord. They don't think that she's serving the Lord. I find that very hard to believe. But anyway, that is what he's saying here, right? Okay, so on a lower plane than Narayana, and on a par with other living beings, including souls and human beings. Now, this part I would disagree with his concept here. He is saying that Tengalais believe that Lakshmi is on a par with everybody else. Well, Lakshmi's certainly not on a par with me. Lakshmi's certainly not on a par with every other living being. All the other living beings, certainly we're all other living beings. We're all dependent upon the Lord, but that doesn't mean that he has a greater servant called Lakshmi. Yeah, just like a king in a palace has many servants. So there's a cook, there's a person who puts the trash out, puts the garbage out at the palace. There's people who sweep the palace and clean the windows, like that. Then he has greater servants. In fact, he has even the queen. The queen serves the king also. It's his divine consort. But the queen is not the king, right? To look at it another way, if we say that the Supreme Lord is the father of all living beings, he's the father of everybody. He's the creator. He's the father of everybody. In Sharanagati Gajya by Sri Ramanuja, it says that he first of all approaches Lakshmi and he says, Jagan Matram, Asmad Matram. You are the mother of the universe. You are my mother, oh Lakshmi Devi, oh Sri Devi. Right. So Lakshmi is the mother of the other living beings. Right. So we don't say that Lakshmi is a child. She's not our sister. She's our mother. She's our mother. She's not equal to us. She's definitely over us. She's our mother, like that. But we also say there's a difference between the mother and the father. There's a difference between the mother and the father. The mother is not the father. The father is not the mother. The father has a role. The mother has a role. Yes, they're both parents. There are parents and children. So really, there's no difference here between Vadagalais and Tengalais. If you really get into it, okay? If you really get into the details, there's not that much difference because basically what the Vadagalais are saying is, we are the children of God. All the souls are the children of God. And then Lakshmi Narayana are our parents. They're emphasizing that Lakshmi Narayana are our parents. So they're emphasizing that we're on one level and the parents are on another level. The children are on one level, the adults are on another level. But a more specific understanding of the family relationship is not only are there children, right? There are and parents, but the parents within themselves, within their relationship, there's also some difference, right? The mother is not the father is not the mother. So the Tengalais have said that we understand that Lakshmi is greater than us. We accept that. She's our mother. She's the mother of the universe, as Ramanuja says in his Sharanagati Gajam, which both Vadagalais and Tengalais accept, right? But still there is the difference between Vishnu Tatwa and Lakshmi Tatwa, whatever Lakshmi's category is. There's a difference because Vishnu is not the mother, he is the father. She is not the father, she is the mother. So she is our mother. We don't pray to her as our father, like that. We don't pray to her for liberation. She is not the giver of liberation. She is not the creator of universes. She is not these things. On the other hand, the Vadagalais go so far to say as Lakshmi is so equal to God, they say, that she can give liberation. She also can give liberation. She also can create universes. That's what the Vadagalais say, like that. The Tengalais question them and ask them, where is there an example of Lakshmi creating a universe? Where is there example of a Lakshmi giving liberation? She's the mediator between the children and the father. The father wants to punish the children for doing sinful activities. The mother has greater compassion sometimes than the father. She wants the father to forgive the children. So she is the mediator between the sinful souls, the children, and the Supreme Father, Sriman Narayana. She is in the middle. If you're in the middle, you can't be on one side. If you're a mediator, you cannot be on one side. In a dispute, when you have an argument between two parties, then you need a neutral party to be in the middle to help the two parties to come together. That is Lakshmi's job. She is a mediatrix. She is a mediator between the two parties, between the living beings and the Supreme Lord. So by saying that she is on one side, she can no longer mediate between the souls. And then why should the souls go and surrender to the Supreme Lord? There's no point. We should just go surrender to Lakshmi and pray to Lakshmi to give us liberation. If she can give liberation, then pray to Lakshmi and she can give us liberation. But we don't have an example of Lakshmi giving liberation. So when the Tengalais, they say that to the Vadagalais say, oh, she can give liberation, but she never does. Because of her husband. She lets her husband do those things. He creates the universes. He gives liberation. She takes a passive a position as the wife, right? As dependent upon him, as his servant, his greatest servant, let's say, like that. And she takes that position. So she although they say in theory she can create universes, in theory she can give liberation, but she never does, like that. So it's just academic. It's just academic. The Vadagalais say she can create universes and give liberation, but she never does. What's the point of saying that if she never does? The point is that they're emphasizing the role of Lakshmi and Narayan together as being who we should surrender to, how we should surrender. The fact is, though, within the two couple, the divine couple, the Divya Dampatis, it's called, the divine couple of Lakshmi and Narayan, Lakshmi plays a very important role, but not the ultimate role of giving salvation, of giving liberation. That is the Supreme Lord's role, right? Her role is to recommend the souls to her Lord and to calm him down and try and plead with the Lord not to punish the souls and to accept their surrender. Yeah. So Lakshmi has a different role. She is the role of the mother. Lord is the role of the father, and we are the children, like that. So there's a difference between father and mother. There's a difference between parents and children, like that. The Vadagalais emphasize the parent-children difference. The Tengalais emphasize the difference between mother and father and children. It's a more detailed explanation. It's a more specific explanation, like that. Both are correct. Both are correct. We don't disagree. They are parents. They are greater than us. She is the mother of the universe. She is the mother of us, like that. She is much greater than us. So this is where I don't agree with this very last part of the sentence here. He says that Lakshmi is on a lower plane than Narayan, but on a par, equal to other souls and human beings. No, she is not equal to other souls and human beings. We don't agree. We don't say that. We never say that she's on a par. We're not the mother of the universe. We can't act as, like to go to the Supreme Lord directly and recommend other people to be saved. We can't do that, right? That's her job and her job alone, right? That's her position and her position alone. So she has a special position, definitely. We're not saying that she's just any old soul like that, like all of us, right? So this is the same in Madhva's idea also. Lakshmi is very, very special. She's far ahead and more spiritual than us. But still, she's below Sriman Narayana. she's still below the Supreme Lord Srimad Narayana. That's all, like that. So it's a matter of degree. It's a matter of going into the details of it like that. So I don't agree with his exact understanding of what Tingalites are. And admittedly, there are misconceptions amongst people who are Wadagalais about the Tingalai position, and misconceptions amongst some Tingalai people about what the Wadagalai position is. And that's what causes problems, is that when people misunderstand what the other person believes, when actually both these sects believe pretty much exactly the same thing. There's very, very little difference. So let's continue on. The chief doctrines held by the Wadagalai section of the Sri Vaishnavas at the earliest times. Okay, so he belongs to the northern school, so he believes that the doctrines, the specific doctrines of the northern school were from the earliest times, and not the Tengalite doctrines were from the earliest school. So everybody who belongs to any school will believe that their school was more original than the other one. That's just him speaking there. So he's saying at the earliest times are the following, and they hold good for now, even now. So for him, right? So he's going to list some of them here. So the Lord Narayana with Lakshmi is the supreme being, right? So that's what I said. They believe that the supreme being is not just one person, but is two, is the divine couple. The divine couple is considered to be the supreme being, which they call Divya Dampatis. Fine. Number two, souls and God are different. Everybody believes that. Everybody believes that souls and gods are different, right? God is not the same as the souls. By resigning oneself or surrendering oneself to God, salvation is obtained. Everybody agrees with that. Both the northern and southern schools of Sri Vaishnavas all agree with that. Number four, conscious volition and thought of him at the time of death, especially for the faithful, is unnecessary. Okay, so this is antima smriti, or remembering God at the time of death, which is normally stated in the scriptures to be the means to attain him or to attain liberation. In Bhagavad Gita, it says yam yam vapi smaram bhavam, whatever we remember, antakale smaran nityam, remembering God at the time of death, right, is important in Bhagavad Gita. But one thing which Sri Vaishnavas differ from perhaps other Vaishnava sampradayas is they believe, because this is something that Ramanuja asked this question, and he was given the answer. And there's also scriptural evidence about this too, right? That remembering God at the time of death is unnecessary, is not completely, absolutely necessary. If you can remember God at the time of death, very good, and you will attain God. If you cannot attain, if you have thought of God throughout your lifetime, Lord Varaha in the Charma Sloka in Varaha Purana, he says, Aham smarami madbhakta nayami paramam gatim. I remember that devotee. If he remembered me sometime during his life, if he thought of me sometime during his life, at the time of death, if he forgets me, if he's in a coma, if he's unable, if he's like a stone or a piece of log, a log of wood, right, simply lying there and unable to think of me at the time of death, I will remember him and I will save him and take him to the supreme abode. So Sri Vaishnavas accept that on the basis of the Varaha Charma Sloka and Varaha Purana, and also on the basis of Ramanuja's question to Varadaraja Perumal in Kanchipuram. He laid out 6 questions. One of those questions was the answer to one of those questions was here. So number 5, an acharya should be sought by everyone. Everyone agrees with this, even beyond Vaishnavas. All Hindus, all followers of Hinduism, they believe that you should approach a teacher, an acharya, maybe more than one, even. That's right, for different purposes, right? To learn spiritual life. So number 6, moksha can certainly be attained by having an acharya, right? So this is also understood as a separate, sometimes can be considered a separate, sometimes together path with property or sharanagati or surrender. When we surrender to God, that is the path to liberation, right? But along with that, we also surrender to the acharya. The acharya also acts in a sense like a representative of Sri Devi as a mediator between the souls and the Supreme Lord. So there's such a thing, though, it is possible simply to take shelter of the acharya even if you can't take shelter of God, simply take shelter of the Acharya. If you take shelter of a good Acharya, then that is called Acharya Abhimana, and that's a fifth way to attain liberation. The other four ways being Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Sharanagati or Prapati, right, and Acharya Abhimana, which is the fifth way, right. So that will be described later on more. So the following Tamil stanza of Tirumalasai Alwar, right, who is the fourth Alwar chronologically, expresses well the Vaishnavite conception of his grace. So we'll just give the, my Tamil pronunciation would be very bad if I try to read that. So let's just give the translation. Whether today, tomorrow, later on, or a long time after, your grace is certainly mine. O Narayana, I very well know that I am not without you, and you without me. Very good. Okay. So all Sri Vaishnavas hold the Alwars and Acharyas in very great veneration. So much so that the images or deities, icons, right, of the Alwars and the chief Acharyas are set up in many a temple and worship. This reverence and worship is due to the belief that the Alwars and Acharyas represent the amsas of God. Amsa means a part, right? So like an incarnation or a part, or an incarnation of a weapon or of a part of God. Their great learning and piety is attributed to the presence of the amsas of God. So the idea is that just like we've heard of this Shaktavesh avatar, they have some portion of the power of God within them, the Acharyas and the Alwars. So a question here is, if Lakshmi Devi cannot give moksha, how an Acharya can give moksha to the disciple? Acharya cannot give moksha to the disciple. That's the answer to that question. No Acharya can give moksha to Lakshmi cannot give moksha, neither can any Acharya. Like that. If you perform the system of Acharya Abhimana, you surrender to an Acharya. That Acharya is surrendered to God. Right? So just like he will be taken, he'll be saved. Along with him, you will be saved. That's the idea. That's the idea. If you have no way, if you're unable to surrender to God, right, directly, which is mostly, it's not practiced separately, right? The idea is theoretically, you're so stupid or so clueless that you cannot surrender to God like that, or you have no way of surrendering to God, but you simply surrender. You know the Acharya. An example is given. There are two examples given. Madhurakavi Alwar, who only praised Nam Alwar, he didn't praise directly God, like that. That's one. Another example is that there is I think Kirachi Amman. There was a person who was a devotee of Ramanuja's who was supposed to be his cook, because a sannyasi is not supposed to cook for himself. And Ramanuja used to go and beg alms. He used to beg food at people's doors as a sannyasi. But there were some envious people in Srirangam at the time who tried to poison Ramanuja, but he escaped from that poisoning. So the devotees decided that he shouldn't go and beg food from different people's places because he might be poisoned, because there were some envious people. So they appointed one devotee to cook for him. Now, one time, the Lord was going, the processional deity of Nam Perumal was going around the temple in his procession, just outside of the mutt or the place of Ramanuja. So Ramanuja said to all the other of his disciples, everybody must come and go outside, pay your obeisances in the street when the Lord comes, and follow the procession of the Lord. That's the etiquette that you're supposed to follow. Like that. This one person who was Ramanuja's cook was boiling milk on the stove. Now, when you boil milk, if you don't watch it, it'll boil over and burn. Like that. So he was watching the milk and making sure that it didn't burn, didn't boil over, like that. Ramanuja commanded all of his disciples to go outside and follow the procession of Ranganathas, right? So he said, this disciple said to Ramanuja, you worship your Lord. I will stay here and worship my Lord. So his point was that he was appointed to serve Ramanuja. Serving Ramanuja meant boiling the milk and making the foods, preparing the meal for Ramanuja, right? So even though Ramanuja commanded him to go and worship the Lord, he said, I don't know Vishnu, I don't know Lord Ranganatha, but I know you. You're my Acharya, and I have supreme faith in you. And therefore, I am going to stay here and serve you by doing this task, which is meant for you. So that's an example. That's an example of a person who performed Acharya Abhimani. Now, you know, it's really theoretical because that person was initiated. That person had done property to the Supreme Lord through Ramanuja, through taking initiation from Ramanuja. So he really wasn't only serving Ramanuja, right? He was also serving the Supreme Lord. But in this particular case, he, instead of giving up everything and going to the festival and following the Lord, even following his own guru's orders, he preferred to do his guru seva, his worship or his work for his service to his guru, to his teacher, Ramanuja. Okay, so that's the point. Now, Ramanuja doesn't give him moksha. He doesn't get moksha from Ramanuja. Ramanuja comes only from the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord, Sriman Narayana, is the only one who can give liberation. It's the only one. Like that. No one else. Lakshmi can't do it. The Guru can't do it. Nobody can do it. Only the Supreme Lord. Now, others can recommend you. Others can help you to get close to the Lord, you know, but only the Supreme Lord can give that liberation. That's the point. Okay, so there are different ways to get that liberation, which include Sri Devi, which include the Guru, which include different methods. There are different forms of property, different forms of there's svata property, where somebody is smart enough, they've studied the scriptures and they know what property is, and they simply surrender to God without a guru, without an initiation ceremony, without anything. Draupadi, Vibhishana, Gajendra, all of these, there are examples in the scriptures of people who didn't get initiated, they didn't have a guru, and they attained liberation by surrendering to God, by doing property. So there are all sorts of different ways. That's called, there's swata property, there's dripta property, there's artha property, there's many different types. So these are all going to be explained. Maybe not in this book, but maybe in some other books, they'll be explained. There's different forms, but there's a general form, which means approach a guru, surrender to God through the agency of the guru, pray to Mother Lakshmi to petition the Lord on your behalf to accept you and to give you liberation. This is general. Okay, so all Sri Vaishnava Brahmins hold the Alvars and Acharyas in very great veneration, so much so that the images of the Alvars and chief Acharyas are set up in many temples and worship. The reverence and worship, which is due to the belief that the Alvars and Acharyas represent amsas of God, parts of God, holy. They are spiritually, divinely inspired by God. They have the power of God within them. They have great learning and piety is attributed to the presence or the Shakti, the power of God within them, like that. So they're considered to be, in terms of that Gaudiya Vaishnavas can understand, like Shaktavesha avatars. Right, they are invested with the power of God, like that, in some form, to a greater or lesser degree, whatever, we don't know. So Ramanuja, the great reformer, is the first of the recent acharyas to be represented by an image in the temple. Right. So before that, there is actually a story about Madhura Kavi Alwar and Nam Alwar, who lived way back in southern India in Tirunelveli district. That Madhura Kavi, being the disciple of Nam Alwar, he wanted to worship Nam Alwar in the form of a deity. So Nam Alwar said to him, "Take water from the river, the Tamrapani river." Right. The word Tamra in Sanskrit means copper. Take water from the Tamrapani river. Tamrapani basically means copper water. Take the water from the Tamrapani river, boil it, and it will turn into a copper deity of me. So Madhura Kavi, this is the story. The Madhura Kavi took the water and he boiled it, and a deity appeared, but it was not a deity of his guru. So he showed it to Nam Alwar, and Nam Alwar said, "This is the deity of a guru that's coming after me. A guru that will come way after me, hundreds and thousands of years after me." This guru will be called, maybe he didn't say he was named Ramanuja, but this deity looks like Ramanuja. This is a deity of Ramanuja. This is called the Bhavishya Murti. You can still go to the temple and you can still see this deity like that. Some people may believe it, some people may not believe it like that. But there are pictures of this deity, and it was called the Bhavishya Acharya, and it is identified with Ramanuja like that. Then Namalwar told the person to go and boil the water again, and he made a deity of Namalwar. So before Ramanuja, before deities of the first Acharya deity, or the first Alwar deity even, right, that was made was this deity of Ramanuja, like that. That was made way back at the time of Namalwar. Since that time, mostly Sri Vaishnavas have only deified their acharyas down to Manavala Muni for the Tengalais, down to Vedanta Deshika, say, for the Wadagalais. There may be, amongst some Wadagalai sects, there may be people who have more modern acharyas made into deities and made into icons, but amongst Tengalais, beyond Manavala Muni, they don't make any deities of acharyas like that. So Ramanuja, during Ramanuja's lifetime also, there were different deities of him made. He was in exile for 10 or 15 years in Melkote in Karnataka when he had to escape from the Shaivite king in Srirangam. So when he left Karnataka and Melkote and came back to Srirangam, all the devotees in Melkote said, "Oh, we're going to miss you a lot." And he said, "Okay, make a deity of me and worship it in the temple here, and that way I'll be here," like that. So the deity of him in Melkote, they made the deity, and when they made the deity, he embraced the deity and said, my Shakti will be with this deity. I'm embracing this deity to show you that this deity is non-different from me. You can worship him here. And then he came back to Srirangam. Another deity of him was made in his birthplace in Sri Perumbudur, which is between Kanchipuram and Chennai, between Madras, present-day Chennai, and Kanchipuram, which is not so far. There's a small place called Sri Perumbudur where Ramanuja was born. In that place, there's a deity of Ramanuja, and it was installed at the time when Ramanuja was living. So the first deity I told you about was made of Ramanuja was made way before Ramanuja appeared, and then these two were made while he was living. The one in Melkote he embraced. The one in Sri Perumbudur, they did the Netra Milanam. When you do Netra Milanam, you open the eyes. There's wax on the eyes, and you open the eyes with a stick, a gold and silver stick. You open the eyes. So at the time, Ramanuja was in Srirangam. He was not near Kanchipuram, and some blood was seen to come from the corner of his eyes when they did the Netra Milanam for the deity in Kanchipuram. So he said, "Oh, they've just done the Netra Milanam for my deity in Sri Perumbudur, in my birthplace." So like that. So it's understood that deity in his birthplace, that deity in Melkote, the original deity in Tirunelveli, made by Madhura Kavi Alwar, all these deities are considered non-different from Ramanuja. And then in Srirangam itself, they don't have a deity of Ramanuja. They do. They have a metal deity of Ramanuja, but the main deity of Ramanuja is his real body, his actual body, which was mummified, right? When he went into samadhi, when he passed from his body, they have preserved his body with camphor and kumkumpu. What's it called? Saffron and camphor and Ayurvedic herbs, and they have mummified his body, and it's there in his samadhi, right? So in Srirangam, they have his original body. In Sri Perumbudur, in his birthplace, they have a deity that when they opened the eyes, blood came from his eyes. In Melkote, they have a deity that he embraced personally and gave his Shakti to. And in Tirunelveli district, they have a deity of Ramanuja that came way hundreds of years before Ramanuja even appeared. So all of these deities of Ramanuja exist. So Ramanuja, it says here, was one of the first recent acharyas to be represented by an image or an icon in the temple. And we have an icon, we have deities now of Namal, all the different alwars like that. And there may be some deities of more modern acharyas also, like that, but normally not amongst the Tengalans. Annual Utsavams are celebrated to him in the month of Chitrai. So his in Chitrai, which means the Chaitra month in North Indian terms, like that. In Tamil Nadu, there are solar months and Chitrai is equal to Chaitra. So his nakshatra day or his birthday, his birth star is Tiruvadirai. Tiruvadirai is in Sanskrit called Ardra Nakshatra. So there are different Sanskrit names and there are Tamil names for the stars, right? So Ardra is a Sanskrit name. Tiruvadirai is actually the word Tiru just means Shri. So if you add Tiru to something, Adra, Tiruvadirai means Adra Nakshatra. And this nakshatra or this star is taken into consideration when fixing the Utsavam or the festival for the appearance day of Ramanuja in the month of Chaitra or Chitra. Okay. Yeah, we'll finish it up. So next to him, the two great acharyas, Sri Vedanta Deshika and Sri Manavala Mahamuni for the northern school and the southern school respectively, who are the special acharyas of the Vadagalai and Tengalai sects, are similarly treated. The festival of Vedanta Deshika is celebrated in the month of Puratasi on the Shravana Nakshatra day, and that of Manavala Mahamuni in the Tamil month of Aipasi. It should be Aipasi, not Aipasi. Aipasi on the Moolam day, on Moolam star day. These are all Tamil names, so you have to understand the equivalence in Sanskrit. So this tendency to represent acharyas by images is now seen to be working in the minds of some. Recently, the Swami, he's talking about in the 1920s, the Swami of the Ahobalam Mutt, which is now a Vadagalai Mutt. Some people say it was a Tengalai Mutt, became a Vadagalai Mutt, right? It's a muttam or a religious institution or monastery preaching a particular doctrine, right? Who is now the head of the Mutt, established that the Mutt, an idol of one of his predecessors, who happened to be his own acharya. So we know in the Ahobalam Mutt, they have a deity. I've seen the deity in the Ahobalam of Abhinava, no, not Abhinava, Mahadeshika, the original Sadakopan, Mahadeshikan, Yatindra Mahadeshikan, the original starter of the Ahobalam Mutt. Okay, so similarly, images of their acharyas are set up by a few Sri Vaishnavas in Conjeevaram. Conjeevaram is another name for Kanchipuram, and Kumbakonam. Kumbakonam is about 70 kilometers from, or maybe less, from Sri Rangam to the west, to the east, excuse me. Right. Generally, however, Sri Vaishnavas who do not belong to the Ahobalam Mutt have a different mentality, and so they are not disposed to set up deities or images or icons of any of the recent acharyas subsequent to Vedanta Deshika or Manavala Mahamuni, right? So from the middle of the 15th century, no more. Usually the Tengalais and most of the people outside of the Ahobalam Mutt and some other Vadagalais, they don't make deities of their acharyas. Okay, so every Sri Vaishnava. So should we leave it here? I think we should leave it here and we'll pick it up later on what we've got. We're getting into some, oops, it's actually not that far. We can finish it off. Right. Okay, so let's finish it off. Every Sri Vaishnava Brahman of Vadagalai and Tengalai sects remembers the succession of acharyas, the Guru Parampara and Alwars prior to his own, up to the Supreme Being who is considered to be the great acharya of the whole universe, by repeating daily or whenever he has to do anything of the nature of religious ceremony, the names of his acharyas and alwars up to God. The following is usually remembered and repeated by the Vadagalai Sri Vaishnava on occasions when he has to remember his acharyas up to God. So he gives the example from the Vadagalais because he's a Vadagalai. So he says, Asmad Guru Bhyo Namaha, Asmad Parama Guru Bhyo Namaha, Asmad Sarva Guru Bhyo Namaha, Srimati Vedanta Guru Ve Namaha, Srimati Ramanujaya Namaha, Sri Haran Kusha Kushaya Namaha, Srimad Mahapurnaya Namaha, Srimad Yamuna Munaya Namaha, Sri Rama Mishraya Namaha, Sri Pundarikakshaya Namaha, Srimad Natha Munaya Namaha, Srimad Shadakopaya Namaha, Srimad Vishpaksenaya Namaha, Shri Namaha, Sri Dharaya Namaha. Right? That is called Vakya Parampara. Right? This is saying all the different names of the gurus, the guru lineage. Then he says, there's a sloka. Asmad Deshikam Asmadiya Paramacharya Nasheshan Gurun, Srimad Lakshmi Yogi Mahapunamun Punam Munim Yamunam, Ramam Padmavilochanam Munivanam, Natham Sadan Sata Dveshinim, Senesham Shrimindira Sahacharam, Narayanam Samshraye. Right. So this also explains, right, in the sloka form, rather than, this is called shloka parampara, that is called Vakya parampara, the first one. So also repeat the following Tamil stanzas or verses composed by Vedanta Deshika in addition to the above two Sanskrit slokas. Those who do not know Sanskrit understand the Tamil much better and know what they are repeating. The translation is, right, I am surrendering myself to him who initiated me into the knowledge of myself, and I'm saluting the line of his acharyas. Then I am also saluting respectfully these acharyas, that is, the most merciful Embaramanna, which means Ramanuja, who was born in Sri Parambadur, Mahapurna, also called Periyanambi, his acharya, right? Alavandar or Yamunacharya, Manakal Nambi, also known as Sri Rama Mishra, Pundarikaksha, who initiated into the secrets of property, Manakal Nambi, right? Nathamuni, Sadakopan, Sene Nathan or Vishvaksena in Sri Vaikuntham, and the goddess Sridevi herself, Lakshmi, who is as sweet and dear to the Lord as Amritam or nectar. And with their help, I am reaching the feet of Shriyapatihi, her husband, the husband of Sriman Narayana, who is the supreme Godhead. In all these stanzas quoted above, the order of the preceptors is the same. At first, one thinks of his immediate acharya, then his acharya's preceptors, then the prominent acharyas, Vedanta Deshika and Ramanuja. After this, preceptors like Manakal Nambi, Uyakonda, Natha Munigal are mentioned. Then Shadakopan or Namalwar is thought of as he is only one of the Alwars mentioned out of the 10. This is because he is the only Alwar, Namalwar, right? He's the only Alwar who is entitled to a place in the list of gurus, the main Alwar, not Namalwar. Namalwar means our Alwar. So far, beings of this world are thought of. Then follows Senesha, right? Meaning Vishvaksena, right? Sri Lakshmi, Sri Devi, and Sriman Narayana, all inhabitants of the superhuman celestial region Sri Vaikuntham.
Om Namo